Welcome to another episode of the Do Big podcast, where we delve into tech and innovations that are transforming industries. Today, we're zooming in on a revolutionary approach that is reshaping the sales landscape in India through AI powered solutions. In a country where the sales sector is booming, as we all know, everyone is growing and everybody needs more sales. The challenges of scale and efficiency are more prominent than ever. Indian businesses are increasingly seeking ways to enhance productivity without compromising on quality. The traditional model of sales is being outpaced by the need for speed and precision, demands that AI can meet with remarkable efficiency. I'm your host, Sheetal Choksi, and joining me today is Sarthak Shrivastava, co founder of Floworks, a platform at the forefront of this transformation, promising to revolutionize how businesses manage sales. With Floworks, companies can empower their sales teams with AI tools that automate critical tasks such as lead generation, email responses, booking your meetings, and of course, CRM updates. Today, we will explore how Floworks is enabling this shift and what it means for the future of sales in India. Before we get started on the conversation and discover how AI is turning the traditional sales model on its head, let me introduce my guest, Sarthak Shrivastava. Sarthak is a seasoned entrepreneurial manager with a robust background in e commerce, logistics, and financial services across India, Singapore, and the Philippines. He is the visionary behind Flowworks, a SaaS platform designed to streamline business software usage for employees. With a track record of enhancing e commerce operations for major brands like M&S, Gap, and Lacoste with OmniRio, and spearheading credit and operations at Zoomtail, Sarthak has more than demonstrated a consistent ability to drive innovation and growth in every venture he's been a part of. Welcome, Sarthak, to the Do Big podcast. An absolute pleasure having you here today with us.
Thank you, Sheetal. That was a great introduction, and I'm really happy to be here. A big fan of your podcast.
Thank you so much. Sarthak, I just want to get onto the journey part of it, really. What got you started with Flowworks? I know when I read on your website, you said it was personal frustrations uh,
Yeah,
around things. I just want to get a sense of what those frustrations were,
yeah.
which led to the startup being formed.
I think it's the typical frustration that every middle manager who's trying to do sales or operations in the world is facing. Right? When you are basically a resource, less an associate, you get into this idea that my job is to do ops, my job is to do sales, get revenue in the company, whatever I'm doing right now, right? Like, um why is there such a high need of maintaining a CRM on an ERP? Or what is the extra work, the side work is to what what we call inflow works. What's the need of that? And you don't realize the importance of that. You generally skip over that. And the well, proof is in the pudding, right? Like, you have Salesforce, which comes out and says that there's up to 92% data in Salesforce is not completed. It's basically incomplete or it's stale, right?
Right.
And then you basically have a similar system like SAP, where processes are mismanaged, like like nowhere ever before, right? Um, and that goes deeper when you essentially become a manager, because now when you're a manager, you suddenly realize that, hey, those CRM activities that you are not updating, your colleagues, your associates are also doing the same thing, and suddenly you realize why they were so needed, why you cannot run such a huge organization with all these different operational inefficiencies, right? And that is the core gist of it, right? I personally had that journey and was frustrated to the core of trying to find a solution of, well, people say, I in a basically a person who's just seeing everything from the outside will say, trying to solve the problem that Salesforce has created. But no, Salesforce has not created that problem. SAP has not created the problem. It's just that the operations in every company is so unique, so difficult, and so time consuming that at times in today's landscape, people are not, or like employees are not able to do their core job which they were hired to do, but rather are just stuck in doing all these extra side jobs, right? and that created Floworks simply.
That's interesting. And do you, how does Flowworks help resolve this issue? Because all of us hate doing the side job. Let's be honest. It doesn't matter what level you're at, everyone hates that additional bit that sits on their plate, and you know you have to do it till systems and processes are put into place, which says, till you don't do this, you cannot, whatever. And if it's linked to your salaries, it gets done. Otherwise, it doesn't get done. All of us know that. So, how do you solve for this?
Well, simply don't make you do it. We get an AI system to do it for you. That's it, right? Like the promise of the AI world was, hey, can the AI system do the manual labor that I was supposed to do, and I can then be, focus more on doing my core job. Let's say, if I take the quintessential example of ChatGPT, right now ChatGPT gets used by a lot of creative people, right? Let's say, copywriters, right?
Mm.
Earlier, their job was to, obviously research, plus, but also make those copies, make the multiple drafts, and ultimately, present them to, basically a team or whoever basically the client was, let's say, whoever maybe their internal customers, whoever it was, right? And finally, when the final version was there, then, do the final edits, make it, presentable. That's it. Suddenly, ChatGPT came in. Now, what you can do is do all those extra manual work by just providing the idea to the system, and the system did extra legwork for you, be it research, be it even, I'll say, creating those drafts, and that's it. Suddenly, your job, which was, essentially 8 hours of, manual slogging, came down to half an hour of creative thinking, half an hour of, prompting, and that's it. Now, my question, or the question that Flowworks asked was, what or how can we make the same thing or same kind of leap for other employees, where employees had to do much more than, just do research and, sit with or talk with the computer, right? It was like, what if there are employees, for example, sales employees, where they actually have to go and, deliver these results in the real world, where they actually have to talk to prospects, customers, clients. And one of the most important things that essentially we found out was missing across the field in the global AI landscape was the ability to do tool usage. Now, when I talk about a bit of the tool usage for the viewers, tool usage basically means the tools that I talked about here: Salesforce, SAP, Gmail, for example, right? If you think about what you are doing in your daily job, you'll realize most of the time you are completing your work using these different kinds of tools, and there are processes systems already set up in these tools. You just have to have the ability to utilize these tools in a judicious way, right? Ultimately, for example, let's say I'll take an example of what we directly solve. One of the things that we do, let's say the AI SDR Alicia. Now, what's an SDR? SDR is a sales development rep. These are in B2B companies traditionally. These are people who do emails, linked messages, phone calls as well, to do the prospecting job. Basically, getting a large set of customers interested in hearing out the product, hearing out the prospect, like essentially what are the product details, so that the sales can be done. Right now, earlier this was a very manual, hard process, because similar to the creative, guys example, they have to do a lot of research. I have, let's say, 50, 100 prospects that I need to reach out today. I'll do a research of those 50 to 100 prospects, go down their socials, figure out what they are, talking about, then strike up a conversation by sending over an email, LinkedIn message, and so on. Right? All this was actually happening on Gmail and LinkedIn, ultimately, if you think about it. Now, suddenly, if I have an AI system that knows that it has to do this thing, which is research the job and create emails and send over, and it also has the ability to use LinkedIn for the research part and sending out emails using Gmail part. Suddenly, it's now it's the same job is converted into putting a list of prospects, which is the first half an hour that I had discussed about in the creative guys life, and the next half an hour of putting the prompts in, like what should the email tone be like, what should the email be sent out, what times, and everything else apart from that. Right. So suddenly, if you think about it, I can break down the job of an SDR into an AI doable job or an AI employee's job. And that's what we do. We provide different AI employees for the companies to utilize with their sales teams. The SDs still are doing the initial manual of which is the human touch, what we call, which is still finding out, these are the warm leads that, we should be trying to reach out to. but the remaining 80 to 90% of the operational job can be taken up by AI, which makes their lives much, much easier.
Fascinating. Tell me today, and I know that there's always this debate between is AI a luxury or is AI a necessity in our businesses? That's a conversation that keeps happening, right? And what you're telling me seems like it's transcending from that having, it's good to have AI versus I must have AI. That seems to be the space. I just want to understand how a sales team empowerment point of view, what is it that you think should happen, or how quickly can AI empower the teams, and how quickly will organizations see results? Because one of the big things, especially in our country, is if I put money and invest in anything AI, I need to see ROI. And I'm just trying to get a sense of how do you make this a necessity, and the cost, how do the costs work for it to become important for an organization?
Definitely. So I think a very important term that we generally discuss with our customers is leverage or efficiency. Like what kind of efficiency can my system bring into your organization? It's very simple, right? If you are running a very small org, uh, which in India no one does, by the way, but and that's a good thing for us, by the way, right? If you're running a very small org, you still have that human factor, coming in a lot, right? You still think about the quality of people. Hey, I am the CEO of the company, I should do all my sales. Great, that's fine, that definitely is or should be the way. But whenever you basically transcend or you basically become a large enough org, which is basically over 10 people, um, in sales especially, you start realizing that a lot of these inefficiencies start adding up, and that's where the need for AI just comes in. Now what is AI doing ultimately is removing the parts and bits of the human intervention that was needed, which by the way humans or your employees in your company did not want to do anyway to start off, right? You are just replacing those with machines. Essentially think about the same way as if you think about the industrial revolution, right? Machines got in, people protested, people were against it because they were like, hey, this will take away my job. But no, that was not the case. It was just machine was just taking up the job with the humans did not want to do and was repeatable, right? And that's the same thing. AI is a basically a machine which has consciousness, not consciousness, but still, imitation of consciousness is possible in AI, right? That's basically ultimately the bottom line. Now, if you think about really, obviously, first of all, it's a need. Because why is it a need? Because ultimately, you are not, if you're not evolving, it's not the same that it's not the it does, that does not say that your competition is not. In fact, they are moving much more faster because everyone in this market wants a competitive edge, especially. And well, I cannot say this enough for my fellow entrepreneurs. The biggest competitive edge is sales. If you have better sales than your competition, hey, you are winning, because it suddenly becomes a flywheel effect. More customers know about you, they talk more about you, and you get basically more and more customers, and it becomes a winning machine ultimately. If you think about Flipkart versus Snapdeal, Flipkart won because of that, simply put. And similar to that, essentially, if you are not investing in AI, you essentially are right now thinking about not maybe investing one of the core technologies kind of things. Like, it's like you will essentially lag behind in the race. But the problem with this whole thing is because AI industry globally is moving so fast that if you're not catching up with it as well with the newer updates that are coming up, you actually do not have the luxury of even waiting for 3 months, because ultimately whoever adopts the technology first will start eating the lion share of the market, right? So that's number two. And finally, I'll say, if you talk about the ROI, that's the best part about Flowworks. We started with ROI in mind. I am a typical, entrepreneurial sales guy. I knew that I want to basically, have something that I would use personally myself. I will tell you, I love being on sales calls, but I hate sending out emails. That basically was my is my entrepreneurial thing. I hate prospecting. So I like, let's first of all get this prospecting bot ready so that even we can use it. And that's the best part. Proof is in the pudding, as I said. Flowworks has amazing sales now and has zero uh, SDRs in the team. So we actually utilize our own product, and that's the same thing, right? All our customers, When you look at typical products, so when you talk about this SDR landscape or sales automation landscape, there's different kinds of tools which are available in the market. There's sales automation tools, which is typically the companies like Instantly, Apollo, which do repetitive, outreaches. They typically have 0.25% conversion, which is extremely low. But when you think about, the cost that they are asking for you to incur, it's also very, very low. So it kind of balances out. But it eats up your, addressable market very, very quickly. That's the problem. Secondly, then you have, employees. We already discussed about the problems of employees. You bring them in, 6 months of training. Anyway, you're losing on 6 months. Plus, these are very expensive people. Any human resource, typically in every company, is the most expensive, or human resource department is the most expensive department for a reason. Humans are the most expensive ones, right? So what we did, and they essentially, with humans as well, you typically are able to, because of a lot of inefficiencies, get around 1% of conversion rates. Conversion rate, when mean here, it's basically meeting booking rates. Let's say I send out 100 prospecting, I get one prospecting out of it. That's what typically this humans can do. The interesting thing that we found out with us was from week two onwards, because first week is training. We essentially also take up your data and train the system. Um, Week two onwards, customers of Floworks are already getting 3% to 5% conversion rate, which is 3x more than a human to start off. Why does that happen? Simply because AI system is a machine. It's not faulting on the places like, it replies in under a minute, whereas replying to every email by a human being, can take up to an hour. And there's a, 16x reduction in, conversion, because whenever that happens. So it's very simply put, if we are following the right aspects, we already get 3 to 5% conversion rates of sales meetings, which essentially is already 300% ROI to start off, if we would have been costing at the price of a human labor. But that's the second beautiful part about it, because this is an AI system. Well, it is much more cheaper than a human being. So it's 5x cheaper than the human being. So suddenly you are like, oh my god, I have 15x leverage over over a human being. And that essentially is it, right? Like, what I tell my customers is hire one great SDR, and they will essentially get you the job of done of 15 great SDRs with Floworks. That's it. So you suddenly essentially start getting a lot of sales calls, and ultimately better revenue. That's my pitch, and that works out for all my customers.
So that's really interesting because you also said that this is about large organizations and then you said 10 salespeople. I'm just trying to get a sense of when you say large organization and 10 salespeople, is your target audience or addressable market the small, medium enterprises or is it the large enterprises? Where does Flowworks fit best?
Yeah. I meant larger than a typical seed stage funded company. So if I give you 10 employees in a typical B2B sales environment, 10 employees basically means, or sales employees basically means pre-series A, series A plus companies. That's where basically we start typically selling in India.
Okay.
Globally, it's a different story. In the US, there are actually even smaller companies that require our solution. But in India, we go Series A or pre-Series A plus. And then the beauty of the solution is, as I said, the more inefficiency in the system actually gets introduced with more number of people. So the larger organization, the bigger the problem is, and they would want us more. But yeah, that's basically what we target right now. Anyone Series A plus in India, globally, anyone can come in. Depends on what kind of outreaching you are doing typically.
Okay. So I'm sure sales pitches for you must be very, very interesting. A, you're pitching a new concept. B, you're trying to explain to people that they will need less people and get more efficiencies, etc. But I'm quite sure that at a sales pitch, you must be coming across certain questions which all clients ask or some clients ask. There must be some myths around AI. What are those interesting questions that you're often faced with when you go for a pitch?
Uh, so typically works in two ways. Either I get a decision maker where the value prop is very clear. If it's not a decision maker, the first biggest question that everyone has, that I need to start off by addressing, is that, by the way, which also you basically misunderstood, is that I'm not asking you to fire anyone. All I'm asking you to think about this tool as assistant that essentially gets your team to do 5x or 10x more. It's a step jump essentially in your sales team. So that's the first you know non-question question that I see on their faces, that hey, if I get this, this sounds cool, this is such an amazing, and the demo is amazing, oh my god, I can't do this job even if I tried or my team tried. um, but should I do it? Should I utilize it? Is it like a, like basically a, am I basically killing my own career by bringing this thing in? And by the way, that's one of the problems that you might be seeing across the board. If you look at the sentiment of well, so to say, SDR influencers globally, everyone for some reason are, like, I've never seen this much hate coming across AI SDR as an industry, or any industry as a matter of fact, by the influencers. They were like, just against this concept. They're like, oh, it does not work out, it's removing the human touch. Well, they are not able to define the human touch, and people are still buying more and more, right? So there should be something that they are not figuring out. So that's the first question that I always start by answering. It's not taking away your job in a subtle way by saying that, hey, it is just making you 10x more efficient. It's basically doing the same thing that ChatGPT did for copywriters. Very simple. Like nothing else, nothing gets removed from your plate. And secondly, it also comes down to, again, with any AI system. And by the way, this is one of the biggest problems that has been playing in the last 2 years in the AI industry, which is security. We are right now with this solution dealing with customer data, basically customer communications, directly, right? And essentially it's prospecting, communications, everything. So the first question comes down is, how reliable is the solution? And that's the biggest problem that, as I was talking about, AI industry has been facing across the board. There's something called hallucinations, that you, whenever you see or discuss what are the problems with ChatGPT, like third or fourth point or second point, everywhere will be hallucinations. Now, to explain a bit of what is hallucinations, it's basically the system dreaming up of solutions which are not there. Right? Essentially, if you think about how ChatGPT or any kind of LLM works, basically you give it a prompt, and the system is trained to complete the sentence. So it's basically trained in something like, okay, sun rises from dash, and then it, until the time it says east, it's not taken to the next set of training. And what it means is, when you provide this kind of this kind of prompt or question, is sun rises from, and system can essentially put in any kind of thing in which was in the training set, and that essentially makes the whole life much challenging for a team like us to use ChatGPT. Now, what happens is, think about this scenario: you want to send out some kind of email to your prospect, and you know it should have sounded right. I looked at the preview, it sounded right, it looked right. I sent it out. But suddenly, every fifth email, system is randomly sending out some random information which was not even a part of the training set. That becomes a problem because, again, I am losing one fifth of my customers. That's cool. But even those 20% emails are right now out there, which can essentially go on my internet, go on basically like social media, and can ruin my company's reputation. Right? So that becomes a huge challenge, which is hallucinations, and it's an unsolved problem. It was an unsolved problem until Floworks came in. Now, why we are special is because we actually trained our own model. Now, this model is not a large language model. It's actually a mixture of agents, is what we call. And the biggest advantage of this over other tools or other language models is it does not hallucinate. It basically a mixture of multiple agents which are made to self correct themselves, right? Much more cheaper. It's much more cheaper than the state of the art models. It's much more accurate, but the biggest advantage is it has 100% reliability, whereas the best reliability available right now, which was with GPT-4 Turbo, was 80%. So 20% straight away jump is what you basically get from this, and that solves out a big problem that these customers are having. Is it reliable? So yeah, answer is yes. This is the only reliable SDR that is available. Please try it out. If you find anywhere unreliability, we'll pay you back. No, don't pay us. No, we'll pay you back if you find any unreliability. So that's the second most important question. And thirdly, I think the most important question that comes down out of that was, how much does it cost? And they're generally very happy with the price. So, yeah.
That is true. For our listeners, all of you who heard Sarthak talk about why their LLM is better, they have a very, very interesting page where they compare their LLM to the others. And I think it's a very interesting read because they put in a lot of data there. They've told you exactly why their LLM is better than the others. So go out there and read it, because I had fun reading it and I'm not from the space of tech. So do
Thank
go
you,
to
Shita.
their website and check it out.
Yeah, I told my team, that keep on rewriting it till I understand what it means, and I'm not a techie. So yeah, it should basically appeal to every non-techie person as well, because hey, my customers are non-techie.
Correct. And which is why I was reading it to see how tech was it and would I understand it or not. So it was quite easy.
Yep.
Um, you touched upon this point as one of the questions that always comes up in conversations and continues to. And I come from the world of retail and e-commerce, so I know part of the answer, but I don't know fully. um, Everybody talks about sales as relationship driven, right? And I remember that when we were in retail and evaluating e-commerce, that was one of the biggest things that was asked of us, saying that how can you replace a sales guy on the shop floor, right? Because he's the one who
Yep.
convinces you on the sales. But how do you, and we've seen this in e-commerce, we've seen the efficiency in e-commerce, where not having a salesperson but having technology sell to you has worked. Amazon Prime
Yep.
example, all of us continue to buy like maniacs on it. How do you balance the need? But so I'm just trying to understand that that's really B2C sales, but in the B2B space, which is where you're operating, how do you balance the need for personal touch with
Yep.
the automation that AI brings in?
And that's the beauty of, by the way, AI. I think mentioned in one of the previous comments that AI is very good at emulating the consciousness of a human being. It's fairly undetectable in single one or two example kind of systems. Right? You'll not be able to understand if this was AI written. Like it's now become fairly undetectable if this was AI or human being. Right, and that's the key answer to this whole thing. So in B2B sales, things do run a little differently than B2C sales. B2C sales has now, I'll say, moved much more towards, I'll say, value discovery than relationship driven sales for a lot of people. And that's why we are seeing, e-commerce, growing so fast. In fact, quick commerce is doing much better now. And that's, a testament even, beyond that. Now people like, at least I thought that I wanted to see the description of a product and look at the comments and everything, but quick commerce is essentially you're not looking at any of those. You're just looking at fastest delivery, get me the product, right? B2B sales also is in a similar way having a paradigm shift in the last, I'll say, 1 decade, as we have seen, right? And so yeah, in basically 2010s 2015s, you would have had much more involvement of sales driven approach, me pushing a product to a customer, than in 2024. Now what 2024 actually is looking like is a typical buying journey for a customer is that they first of all want to get educated about the product without the pressure of a salesperson. So that's the most important thing, that the nuance that teams now need to understand, that it's not just about doing the sales, but it's still about giving or delivering the value to the customer. Getting the customer to know about you is the most paramount thing right now, and if the product has value, they will be educated and they will come and buy from you. They're okay to test out multiple products. Ultimately they want to basically make that decision on their own rather than being sold. So that's the most key thing that we figured out. Plus, apart from that, obviously the channels of B2B sales or marketing are not that much as much as B2C sales. If you think about B2C sales, you have like this tens and tens of different places that I can market my product. But versus B2B, it's much more fairly limited. So what it comes down to is that you need to get the message to your customers that hey, this is something I sell and this is what I do. And you also need to figure out what channel are they okay to basically receive this kind of message on. And the answer is simple: emails, number one, great. LinkedIn, number two, okay, I can expect that. Phone calls, maybe, but that's it. Nowhere else, I want me to be sold a B2B product. Right? And suddenly, you now have to start thinking about, what can or how can I, as a company, look at doing my sales in these three different channels where I actually can, automate a lot of the part of reaching out to the customers in a fairly, process oriented way, while also not incurring a lot of, operational expenses on the company, right? That's basically the gist of, how companies think, the ones who are growing really well, or the companies who are not growing that well should think about, sales process in today's landscape in the B2B side of things. And suddenly you get struck by this, kind of apples to apples comparison, that what happened to B2C space was that we started creating automation systems, and that's what we are doing as well as Floworks. That's what Apollo did with, sales automation, which was, sending out the same message across the board. But suddenly, people realized, or like, it's that's the truth of the world, that, all the same emails across the board do not cut it, because those are emails. Emails get boring. So suddenly it was required that, I need to send out personalized emails. Now, personalized emails are being sent out by humans. How can I make those hyper personalized emails sent by machines? And that's an AI is just simply put. So you suddenly have to start thinking of processes instead of humans, and you start realizing that, this all makes sense. This is how the industry is going. And in fact, industry is not still, it's still in the infancy phase. We are now getting more and more different systems where, you can get better understanding of the product. In fact, one of the very, very core things that we are told when we were in YC, that, think about, G2 or, Gartner scores. Reviews of customers are very important across the board. So, like how in e-commerce in 2015, 2010, 2020, right now as well, you expect your customers to, ask, put great reviews out for you. We are asking our customers or B2B customers, to do the same thing over LinkedIn and G2, right? And so that's the thing. Like, it's basically B2C cycles are now getting, replicated in the B2B side of things, but just in a little different way. And that's what it is. Like, so relationship wise, you still do the, follow the same process, but the relationship ultimately comes afterwards when the customer has said yes to, yeah, I this is something which I need. Now let me see, what kind of relationship I can try. And relationship becomes still very important. You have to still get the customer to realize that, you care about their problem, and, you will be supportive of them. You will basically be there to solve out or help them out in the problem of need. That comes in the sales journey, which is afterwards, which is basically after the prospecting is done, when you get into the first sales call.
It's also very fascinating because as the consumer is changing, right? I think ultimately a B2B consumer or a B2B person is also a consumer. What's happening is that a slightly older generation still wanted that one-on-one conversation and ability to converse, etc. But I see that the next generations are very happy not having a conversation. It's like, can we finish this on WhatsApp? Can we finish this on mail? They don't really seek the absolute personal relationships that maybe the Gen Xers and that generation wanted. My generation, if I may say it, wanted. Right? We were used to having somebody we could call and speak to and resolve an issue. Today's generation is just very happy getting into solving it on their own or using tech interventions to get their problem solved. That in itself also reduces kind of dependency one has on human interaction and allows for
Yes.
AI to take over some of the core tasks.
I would say people are changing more towards the social proof
Yes.
paradigm than, basically this one-to-one conversation. Because, hey, what has happened is, sales for, like, I can't, stress more. Like, sales has been on sales level always, but there have been, cases of mis-selling across the board, right? Like, we promise the world to the customer, and when we go and deliver, it's maybe, nothing even, compared to that, right? And that becomes the biggest problem, right? So that insecurity, and obviously, like, negative examples are always, get, I'll say, better limelight than positive examples, right? So that essentially kind of insecurity has been, like a part of, I'll say, the mindset of consumers for the longest of the time now. And now what they're looking for is more of social validation that this thing works. That's what the reviews are all for, right? Like, ultimately, I go on, when I'm going to a restaurant, I go on, Google to search which, food items should I buy in this restaurant, because wait, I don't know, and, I don't maybe trust the waiter that much. Its masses are better than, a single human being telling me something. So that kind of thing has removed the requirement or burden of relationship building a lot. And that's why you see a lot of tools, B2B tools right now doing prosumer, or I'll say, bottom up sales, which is basically, just get, get signed up on my website, start using the solution. Hey, and if you like it, pay. Cool. So it makes the lives of entrepreneurs much easier. Now you just have to, focus on a great experience in a tool. But that being said, when you go to larger organizations, because this always be, it's a bunch of people, like it's a different kinds of, people, decision makers who are there. So you'll always have some people who would want the relationship value. So you still want to, deliver that value of relationship to the consumer so that they feel confident. So it's basically a mix of it. Ultimately, the customers or the businesses that thrive the most for us as well. And by the way, in a larger Y Combinator batch as well, the companies that are doing the best were the companies who are doing a better job of mixing both the approaches, which is relationship driven at the point where you realize that this is a huge customer, or this is a customer opportunity that I want to invest in, plus having the self-serve mode as well, so that you can have multiple more people trying the solution out without having the operational overhead on your side, and restricting them to try it on themselves by themselves on their side as well.
That's really interesting. So, as my last question, I want to ask you this: that entrepreneurs who aspire to make it big in the B2B space, what advice would you give them, especially when it comes to building a scalable tech driven business?
Okay, number one, sign up for Floworks. Most important. But that being said, yeah, I think the most important thing that we as entrepreneurs at times forget is that we are doing this for a customer. So talking to customers is, I think, it's everyone says that it's important. Everyone, like even I said it's important for throughout my entrepreneurial career, but we started talking to customers very late, and that's the number one thing. Stop talking to. So okay, when I say customers, this is basically potential customers, the potential users of your product. Number one thing to do, like before doing anything, before doing taking any call, is just go talk to a few people who you think will be able to pay for this, and just listen honestly if they want to basically get the solution, and then only invest in basically anything that you're trying to build. Secondly, AI is one of the most interesting times this world, or like my lifetime, in my lifetime I think I'll ever see, because this suddenly is now making machines think or act similar to how human beings were. We suddenly are creating beings, is what we call in the we interestingly in Floworks have started calling Alicia, the AI SDR, as her instead of it, because it feels that she can talk to us like a human being does. And suddenly you have to realize that it's a great opportunity. Right now it feels like wild wild west.
Mm.
It is very challenging to look at. Sometimes it's also very very interesting, motivating as well to a lot of people. So this is the right moment to journey into the tech world if you're trying to build something SaaS. Think AI, think what processes were there in the last 2 decades that were created, that were part of businesses, that now can be disrupted using this new technology. And if you find a great white space, talk to consumers. If it's right, just get into it. I'm sure you'll find something amazing hidden at the end of the road, which mostly for my friends have meant great companies, great businesses that they've found in the last few years.
As a researcher, this sounds just perfect for me, because we always tell every business that you have to do research, you have to understand it. And for startups, we often tell them that, what problem of the consumer are you solving? Do you even know that? If you can test that as a concept, you know whether you're in business or not. So I think you're absolutely right. If you don't know your customer, you don't know what his pain points and what his needs are, how are you going to address it to begin with? So, as a researcher, I completely resonate with that. Sarthak, thank you so much for being on this podcast today. It was absolutely a fun conversation, and thank you so much for throwing light on how your systems allow for sales people to be empowered to do what they're supposed to do, which is sell, and
Yep,
take away all of the boring stuff at the back end. So thank you so much, an absolute
definitely.
pleasure.
It was a pleasure here as well, Sheetal. It was a great conversation, and yeah, I am looking forward to your more episodes. I'm, as I said, a big fan. So looking forward to who you cover next, and hopefully I get a great ton of basically people to start up their company so that I can get more customers. Great.
Thank you for tuning in to the Do Big podcast, a podcast that is dedicated to providing insights, strategies, and success stories of smart digital solutions for SMEs. We believe that behind every successful business, there's a strong foundation of reliable and secure technology, be it digital connectivity, cloud infra, cloud apps, collaboration tools, or cybersecurity solutions. In a rapidly evolving digital world where technology is key to progress, Tata Tele Business Services stands at the forefront of digital transformation of SMEs. Tata Tele Business Services, with their extensive experience and commitment to empowering businesses, understands the unique needs of SMEs. Whether it's scalable connectivity, robust communication tools, or tailored ICT solutions, Tata Tele Business Services is here to propel your business forward. Tata Tele Business Services is synonymous with innovation, reliability, and transformative solutions. So, if you're ready to take your organization to new heights of success, we encourage you to explore the transformative possibilities that Tata Tele Business Services has to offer. Our contact details are in the description below. Remember, we're available on all major podcast platforms. So if you enjoyed today's conversation, subscribe to our podcast for future episodes, which we promise will be packed with equally valuable insights on questions entrepreneurs face as they digitize and scale businesses with the help of technology. Don't forget to rate and review our podcast, as well as share it with peers, colleagues, and other entrepreneurs like yourself who will benefit from listening to it. Thank you for listening to us, and until the next time, keep embracing technology and may your business thrive in the digital era.